Do you ever worry that your scenes just aren't working, but you can't put your finger on exactly why? And most readers miss a few simple fixes that make all the difference. And I've seen my students nail these, and suddenly their scripts stand out. So in this video, I'm going to give you a 5-step checklist you can use right now to fix your broken scenes. But first, what is a broken scene? Well, in a screenplay, a broken scene is a scene that feels like it's just there. Like it wanders without purpose. It's not missed if you cut it. And most deadly of all, it's a scene with no conflict. So if you've ever read a script and thought, this just feels like filler, you're staring at a broken scene. And here's the thing. Even one or two of those can sink your entire script because readers don't grade you on the best parts. They judge you on the worst. They're looking for a reason to say no. And if you have too many broken scenes, they just stop reading. So that wandering, disposable scene without conflict is the rotten apple that spoils the bunch. Now, not every scene is supposed to be jam-packed with fireworks. Some scenes are transitional. Some are just establishing shots. Some are those little moments of preparation or aftermath that exist purely for the audience's emotional enjoyment. Think about Rocky warming up in the dressing room before the big fight, or Frodo and Sam catching their breath on the slopes of Mount Doom. Those aren't broken scenes. They're purposeful, even though they aren't moving the story forward or moving the characters forward. Those scenes exist solely for the audience. You could take them out and the story isn't broken, and you need scenes like this. But not every scene is one of those scenes. In fact, those kinds of scenes only make up about 10% at most of your total scenes. So if a scene doesn't clearly fall into one of those 10% of transitional scenes, then you run it through this 5-step checklist that I'm going to give you. This is your revision tool. Every other single scene you've written should face this test. And if it passes, the scene lives. If it doesn't, you fix it or you cut it. It's as simple as that. To get at the first item on the checklist, imagine you're watching The Godfather, and there's that classic restaurant scene, Michael sitting across from Sollozzo and McCluskey, and the tension is building. We know there's a gun in the bathroom. Michael excuses himself, and when Michael comes back, that's when everything explodes. And that scene works because it's packed with beats, with story beats and with character beats. And you can track exactly how the narrative moves forward and how Michael shifts from hesitant outsider to stone cold killer. Those are the things that create great scenes. So step 1 is identifying the beats. Every scene needs to either move the story forward or reveal something about the character's journey. Ideally both. And if it does neither, congratulations, you've just found dead weight, so cut it. So the question you ask yourself about the story beats is, what happens here in this moment that changes what happens in the next moment? And on the character side, what does this moment reveal about who they are or who they're becoming? And keep in mind, scenes are not wallpaper. They are gears in the machine. And if a gear doesn't turn anything, why is it in the machine? So if the gear of your scene isn't turning anything related to story or to character, you gotta get rid of it. And the only way you know is to identify all the beats. For step 2, you have to look at who's actually in the room. And this might sound obvious, but a lot of writers miss it. You can't just think, well, this is a scene between my protagonist and their best friend. You've got to account for every single character who has a speaking role. And that's step 2. Identify the characters in the scene. Don't just assume you know. So anyone who speaks, anyone who matters, they're part of the dynamic. You need to list them. And you're going to need to know specifics. You're going to need to know those character names for step 3, which is where your scene fixes start to level up your scenes. And to understand step 3, have you ever gone into a conversation with someone in real life, so a boss or spouse or best friend, whoever, and you knew exactly what you wanted to get out of that moment? Maybe it was a raise, maybe it was just 10 minutes of their time. Either way, you had an expectation. You had something you wanted. And that's what you've got to find for your characters in each scene. So step 3 is determining what every character wants in that specific scene, not in the story as a whole, in that moment. Maybe your protagonist wants information. Maybe the supporting character wants to stall for time. Maybe the string character just wants to leave and grab a sandwich. And whatever it is, it should be achievable in the scene or shortly thereafter. That's what creates drive. And without it, your characters are just standing around, they're trading dialogue, and the audience knows it. Let's go back to Michael in The Godfather. And in that restaurant scene, his goal in that moment is clear. First is to survive, and then to execute. Sollozzo wants a truce. McCluskey wants to flex his power. Everyone wants something. And that's why we can't look away. The scene has purpose because the characters have purpose. And every character can't always get what they want. And that brings us to step 4, because once you know what each character wants, now you add in the secret sauce for great scenes. Conflict. But don't jump to thinking that it has to be a car chases or fistfights or a gunfight or something like that. Conflict simply means something is in the way of a character getting what they're after. I mean, one character wants something, another character doesn't want them to have it. Or maybe the environment itself is an obstacle. Or put them all together, and that's when things get electric. And that's step 4 in the checklist. You've got to dial up the conflict. So picture this. You've got one character who is desperate to get the truth out of someone, but that someone is stonewalling them. Meanwhile, a third character is panicking because the room they're in is flooding and neither of the other two seem to care. I mean, that's not just a scene. That's a great scene that makes audiences lean in. Conflict is what makes dialogue crackle. It's what makes the air feel heavy when you're reading or watching. And if your scene has no conflict, the scene dies. And if the scene dies, the story dies. I mean, period. And readers stop reading. Audiences just check their phones. And that brings us to the final step where you'll actually rewrite the scene. Because up until now, you've been making lists and making notes. But now you're going to actually rewrite the scene. And you can't effectively rewrite it if you don't know the previous elements in the checklist, especially the conflict part. It's because you don't start a scene with everyone just strolling in, chatting about the weather, and finally getting to the point. I mean, that's amateur hour. Essentially, you have 2 places where you should start a scene. One is you start it when the conflict starts. We come in the scene, and it's like someone just shouted, "Go," and we're off to the races. Or the second place you can start is at the moment when the wants for the characters are made known, which is usually a moment or 2 right before the conflict starts. So you have to cut the fat. You got to start late and end early. That's what that means. Start right before the conflict and end right after. So step 5 in our checklist is to focus the scene in the revision. And a good example is the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, the first time we meet Indiana Jones is in action, when he stops someone from trying to kill him and take the maps that he's using to find the treasure that he's hunting. We don't waste time watching him set up camp, make dinner, and then finally get to the idol. We drop right at the edge of danger, and Indy's wants are crystal clear. And when he finally escapes with the idol, that scene ends. It's done. And we're on to the next scene. And in Indiana's case, someone else has shown up to steal the idol from him. And now the natives are hunting him. There's new conflict. It's a new scene. Well, now what does he want? Well, he wants to escape. And that's how your scenes should work. Characters want something, they fight for it. The moment we know whether they get it or not, that scene is over. And then they have a new want and a new tactic. So the checklist is this. First, identify the beats, both story and character. Second, know exactly which characters are present in the scene. Third, figure out what each of them wants in that moment. Fourth, highlight the conflict that naturally comes from those wants colliding. And fifth, rework the scene so it begins right at the point of conflict and ends when the outcome is clear. That's it. 5 steps. But don't let the simplicity fool you, because most writers, they never actually test their scenes against something this concrete. They just hope the scene feels right. But hope is not a strategy. This checklist is. And if you do this for all of your main scenes, you'll suddenly find your script is humming along, because now every scene doesn't wander. It's focused. Every scene matters to the story. It cannot be removed without breaking the story or a character arc. You'll have loads of conflict, which is what makes a story interesting and engaging. And your story becomes the kind of read that makes producers sit up, they pay attention, and they keep turning the page. And that's what you want. But great scenes aren't enough. You also need great characters. And in this video right here, I break down the secret for writing unforgettable characters. And if you'd like my help to write great scenes and scripts that are of professional quality, click a link below and then, watch this.